Hi guys, it's that time on Monday night. We are live. We've got a massive card at the weekend to go through. I'm joined by Josh and Yaz to help me go through the Eubank Ben card. This is going to be fantastic. It's the continuation of the legacy from their dads. But before we go into that, yes, we've got a bit of an update again from the heavyweight scene, haven't we? What's Eddie Hearn been saying about it?
Yeah, well, news broke out earlier today that, Eddie Hearn said that as far as he's aware, the fight is off now because they haven't heard back from Fury's team. Obviously, we know, over the recent few weeks, it's been all over the place. He's gone from saying, Tyson Fury's gone from saying, initially that he was going to fight Usyk for the undisputed. And then he went on to say, I'll fight AJ. And then he said he's fighting Char. And then now we're hearing that Derek Chisora has been sent a contract to fight
It's never
for
ended.
December.
You'll be fighting him next.
Exactly. For all, like, I'm probably going to be next to get called out by Fury. But yes, it's all a bit bizarre. I just feel like it's all a bit of a mess right now. Things didn't play out how they anticipated. And, Fury is probably offering Derek Chisora that fight. If it is true that Fury is probably giving Derek Chisora that contract as a way to kind of get the fans back on his side, because there's been a lot of criticism recently from people to say, why is he going to fight Manuel Shaw? Like, what's Manuel Shaw done? So I feel like getting that Derek Chisora fight. He's a British fighter. The fight will sell. They've got history already. It's a trilogy, and so on and so forth. So I just feel as though right now it's just a bit of a circus, to be honest. Team Fury, they don't know what they're doing. Frank Warren, on the one hand, is saying, oh, yeah, we're still looking to make the fight. That was the last thing that I heard from him. And then we got Fury saying, oh, there's a deadline today. The deadlines keep changing, keep moving the goalposts. So, yeah, it's just all a bit bizarre right now, to be honest.
Bizarre, confusing. I guess it's just a case of wait and see, isn't it? Yes, that's the best way to describe it. Well, we've got a special guest joining us this week. Imran, how are you doing, pal?
I'm good. How are you guys? You good?
I'm terrific. Imran, Eubank Ben. Finally, it's happened. We're getting into fight week. Break it down for us, pal. How do you see this fight going?
I think it's like to be honest with you, I think it's a one-sided fight. To be honest, I think Eubank will beat him pretty comfortably. Ben's too small and a guy that's really big. I think the only interesting thing about this fight is the fact that is the weight going to make a difference? Is Eubank going to be handicapped? Apart from that, if Eubank is anywhere near his best, I don't even think the fight's going to be that great, to be honest with you. Like, I'd be very surprised if it's even that interesting because the size difference between the two is massive. If you look at it, they face off, and Ben's not even a big welterweight. He's not even proven really at world level yet. Not to say Eubank is a world killer at middleweight either. But I just think that he's a bit more experienced. He's done a lot more in the game. I think he's a lot better than what people give him credit for. I think he's got a great chin. Think about it. He fought George Groves. George Groves was a solid fighter, very well-schooled fighter. He hit Eubank with virtually everything. And Eubank was still standing. I can't really see a welterweight. If a big super middleweight that could punch, that put one of our greatest super middleweights down in Froch, who had one of the best chins of any British fighter. He had him all over the place. That same guy couldn't even tilt Eubank. I can't really see a small guy that's 5'9", 8 against a 6 foot, like I said, guy with a granite chin.
It's interesting you say that, Imran, because I've got Mickey C here, one of our regulars. Hello, Mickey. He says, I've got a funny feeling that Ben will do him. He says, I think Ben has got more hunger. It shouldn't be a contest on paper, though. What would you say to Mickey?
But it's not. The thing is, that, like, the size difference, the size difference is just too much. It's too much. I can't see how. Ray, how do you guys see it? I don't see how someone with Conor Benn, like Conor Benn's not someone that's really skilled, or he's not shown me that he's one of the most skilled fighters that's going to go up. Like, and beat someone as big as Eubank. And like I said, Eubank's not as bad as what people make him out to be. Yeah, he's a bit disjointed. He's not the greatest fighter in the world. I mean, he's not the most skilled, but he's still a solid fighter. He's proven against decent opposition that he can fight, right? And he can give you a fight against anyone. You put Eubank in anyone at middleweight, you can give them a fight. Not necessarily he's going to win, but you can give them a fight. I don't even know, like with Conor Benn at welterweight, for example. I don't know. I don't really know what he's been fighting guys that were.
And that's where I'm going to bring Josh in and run, because Josh is of the view that Ben's got this. Aren't you, Josh? So, do you want to tell us why you think Ben wins this fight?
To be fair, I don't even know if it's something that I'm convinced Ben's going to win the fight. I'm definitely team Ben, however, but I'd agree with Mickey C in his previous comment I think it's going to come down to hunger. You know, normal rules go out the window. There's no belts on the line. This is purely about a family legacy and family feud.
It's about pride, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about pride, and pride does funny things to people, doesn't it? And I think the hunger's going to be there. I think, okay, I agree with what you're saying, Imran, about it's questionable opposition that Ben's fought. However, let's really get into Eubank's resume. Who's he beaten? He's not beaten anybody. Avni Yildirim, Liam Williams. You know, I'm struggling to think of, these better, an old past it James DeGale. Are we saying they're his best win?
Josh, would Conor Benn beat Liam Williams?
But you could probably compare Liam Williams to an Algeria Van Heerden. He's never done anything past British level.
No, I get that. Yeah, Algeria's probably better.
Conor Benn's not a middleweight, is he? So we understand why this fight's been made. But to say would he beat Liam Williams is a different ballgame, because that's like saying, would Chris Eubank Jr. beat Dimitri Bivol? No, he wouldn't. Do you know what I mean? Because of the size difference, it's going up 2 divisions to fight a genuine middleweight. I just think when you actually look at who Chris Eubank Jr. has beaten, yeah, you can say he gave Billy Joe a bit of a tough night in, the second half of the fight. He made it uncomfortable for George Groves. He's not beating these people. And when it comes down to hunger and will, in fairness to Conor Benn, I think, we always say, and Ray, I think I know you're Eubank, but you're going to have to agree with this. We always keep the same energy on the channel. Just because they've not shown that they can yet doesn't mean they can't. Ben is still very, very young to this pro game. He's made no secret. He's took it seriously. He's trained properly. And let's be fair, he's had his dad stood over him as well, which, if Nigel Benn was shouting down my ear to make me train, he's going to make you train hard, isn't he? And he's going to have had in his ear for the whole time, family pride's on the line here, mate.
But you see, so we've got a comment here from boxing historian Davey. He says no one's ever put Eubank down. Can't see Ben stopping him. But more importantly, he says Ben hasn't even been tested yet. So yes, bearing in mind what Davey's saying, who has Ben fought that's going to prepare him for this challenge on Saturday?
I think it's a case of maybe not necessarily who he's fought. I feel like he's been sparring, obviously, with what's his name, Felix Cash, right?
Cash. Yeah.
Now, obviously, I know sparring and fighting is different, but for me, I don't think it's a case of who he's fought, and I feel like it's a case of preparation. And I feel like we look at the trajectory of Conor Benn. We've seen him, like, he's been on a rise, right? Ever since him and Tony Sims have been working together, and we've seen big improvements from Ben as his career has gone on. Whereas I feel like Eubank's kind of, hit a plateau. But for me, I just feel as though with Conor Benn right now, he's coming obviously with he's got that hunger, he's got that determination, and I just feel like there's a chance that Eubank could possibly be underestimating him. So I just feel like the work that Conor Benn is putting in, and obviously he's got his dad by his side. With team, obviously we know that there's a lot of showmanship going on within this fight, but I just feel as though when you look at the two teams, one of them, from what it looks like from the outside point of view, one of them, it looks like they're all over the place, whereas Ben's team, they've got their focus. We know Tony Sims is, of recent, he's one of the best coaches at putting together a game plan. So I just feel like, and Tony Sims, I feel like he knows, or he's figured out a way on how they're going to beat Chris Eubank. Whereas Eubank, I feel as though with him, he's just thinking, all right, I'm going to take this fight as it goes. I feel like he's going to come out and, you know, see how the first couple rounds go. Let Ben, you know, come out, throw some big shots, and then take it from there. So I feel like it's a case of preparation, not necessarily who is fault. Because, like Josh said, to this point,
so Mickey says David Haye and Valuev. Haye was a quarter of the size and still had the hunger to beat him. I think if Eubank gets rattled, he'll bottle it. Never won a hard fight he's been in. I think that's a bit of a tricky example because although Valuev was so much bigger than David Haye, in terms of skill, David Haye was levels above Valuev. If they were the same height, it would be the complete mismatch. Nobody would be giving Valuev a chance. Imran, do you think the difference in skill is as vast as what Mickey's saying in terms of Haye and Valuev? Because in my opinion, David Haye was a completely different world away from Valuev in terms of skill.
Valuev was like a tree. I mean, and to be honest, that fight was, I mean, nothing really happened.
It was more of a circus, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was terrible. I mean, how many punches were thrown in that fight? I mean, I don't blame Haye. The guy was too big, but the point I'm trying to make is that it was nothing to do with hunger. It was that guy was too slow. I mean, Valuev was not like he's probably too hungry. He ate too much. I mean, the guy was a monster. I mean, you know, he was just too big and Haye was too small and too short. But Conor Benn's not too small and too short for Eubank's fast himself. I mean, the guy's got quick hands. He's not slow. Eubank's not slow fire. And like I said to you, Conor Benn so far in all his fights, he's been aggressive. He's been coming forward. He's not like he's been boxing these guys. He's been coming forward and wiping them out. You're not going to wipe Eubank out. The only way he's wiping Eubank out is, like I said, if the weight has an impact. Eubank is not going to get chinned in this fight unless, like I said, the weight, he's just totally drained. He can't take a shot and he just gets taken out. Otherwise, I can't really see him getting knocked out in this fight. And can Conor Benn outbox him? I don't think so.
Just a quick point. Greg's come up, Real GST. Greg, how are you doing, pal? He says, to me, this is Eubank's fight to lose with only coming down £3 compared to Ben having come up £10. That might be so. But Josh, do you think it's actually going to be the rehydration clause that's going to be the Ben's advantage rather than actually coming down to £3? Because you can come down an extra £3, but if you can still put on as much weight as what you want to put on, then it's an uneven fight, essentially. But I think it's a rehydration clause that's going to be key. What do you think?
No, I'd agree. I mean, the £3 obviously is not helpful. You know, like you said, he's not been there. He's just turned 33. He's not done that.
But he said he can make it. He said he can make it.
No. Of course. Well, you'll never hear a fighter say they're going to be drained to fuck, are they? They're always going to say, "Oh yeah, I can do it." True. I think, as you said on part 2 of the behind the scenes documentary that Matchroom have been doing, it's the rehydration clause. That's where he's gonna feel the pain because he can't put in as much water as he'd want to after the weigh-in. He can't put in as much food, as much carbohydrates as he'd want to. So, and the science backs that up, doesn't it? That's why this 60% number started. Whether it's 60% accurate or not, time will tell. But that's where that comes from. And it makes sense because, you know, he'll get his energy from his carbohydrates. He's not going to get them. But he's still going to naturally be the bigger man. And also, we've seen fighters move up. You know, look at Ricky Hatton. At light welterweight, he was a beast. At 147, he didn't quite have that same snap in his punches and wasn't as effective. You know, not that his power left him, but it certainly didn't carry all the way through. So while we're seeing Ben knock over people at welterweight, and yes, I hear people say the quality of opponent, is he going to carry his power 10 pounds? Do you know what I mean? Like, I know they say on the night he'll weigh whatever, but it's still a different ball game. And if Eubank leans on him and stuff, he'll still be the physically bigger man. So that the weight, I think it's as much as an advantage and disadvantage for both men. I genuinely think that.
Yeah. And obviously, Mickey C's come back in relation to the point he made about Haye and Valuev. He says, I just mean in terms of size, not as an example as skill. I just don't get the hype around Eubank. He's done next to nothing in his career. Yes, what do you make of Eubank's career so far?
Obviously, I feel as though like right now he's not exactly where I feel he should be. Obviously, but I feel like with him, there's always going to be that pressure, you know, with what of a good fighter that his dad was. But
Yeah.
I just feel like that's why I feel he's taken this fight in a way like people have kind of been. I feel like he feels like people have kind of been putting disrespect on his name. So I feel like this is like his fight. Like, yeah, cool. It's not for a title or anything, but this is his fight where he comes out and he like makes a statement, and it's also like a pride thing. And he knows this is what will get people to put more respect on his name. So I feel like at the moment, I feel as though he has kind of underachieved in his career. But you know, if he wins this fight, then I feel like it just takes him to another level, and you know, maybe he could fight for a title next year or something like that.
Imran, I want to come to you because I think you said a really interesting point. Essentially about people not necessarily sleeping on Eubank, but really severely underrating him. But do you think some of that is partly to do with his performances under Roy Jones Jr.? Because they've been a little bit
Yeah,
flat. He hasn't been as aggressive and he hasn't had the punch output as what he usually has.
Yeah, to be honest, his performances have been a bit disjointed. Like you don't know what he's trying to do. I mean, if you look at some of the fights that he had fought, I can't remember, fought a southpaw, and he looked terrible in that fight as well. He didn't look great, and then he fought Marcus Morrison, I believe, and then he didn't look great in that fight as well. And even against Liam Williams, he started off well. I think he put him down a couple of times, and he just went into like I don't know what he was doing. I mean, he was just like posturing around and. I don't know, just really strange. I don't know whether he was doing that intentionally to prolong the fight or whether the guy's a bit strange. I mean, the way he acts outside the ring, sometimes he acts like that inside the ring. You don't really understand what he's trying to do. Like, why didn't he go in for the kill and look to knock him out? But what I'll say about this, Ray, about this fight is that I think a lot of people are picking Ben because they want Ben to win, because they don't like Eubank. But when you look at it realistically and you break it down, I can't really make a case for Ben. Really, I just can't see it. Like I'll be shocked. And I'm not high on Eubank. I'm not very high. I'm not think he's that great. It's just that I think the size difference. I think they're both at the same kind of level. In welterweight, he's at the same kind of level. At middleweight, he's at the same kind of level. Eubank might be a little bit experienced, but yeah, I think the size difference is too much.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And Josh, I mean, we've had Greg say here, it can Ben carry the power up another division and a half. Big punchers have found it takes time to transition. Sometimes the power moving up in weight. But I think the key thing is as well as the focus on the fighter, sometimes it's the opponents as the fighter steps up in weight, they absorb punches a lot better. But what Imran was saying about Ben, he isn't as technically good. But you've seen a lot of improvements under Tony Sims. What if you're advising him in this fight? You're training him and you're in his corner for this fight. What would you say are the 3 keys to be beating Eubank?
Fitness, heart, and activity. Because, you know, Marcus Morrison showed it in flurries, as Imran sort of alluded to. Eubank looked uncomfortable, whether it was the style Roy Jones Jr. was sort of implementing on him. But he looked uncomfortable when Morrison came forwards. You know, he can say, and I know Davies put in the comments, obviously, and he did say, I wanted to punish Liam Williams. So he wants, when Liam Williams tried to pressure, he didn't look great. So I think, fitness would be the number one thing. He's got to be prepared to do 12 hard rounds, which in fairness is the biggest question mark for me because we've not seen him have to do it yet. He's not had 12 punching rounds. So I think that would be the key thing. But I think the sparring's also going to have been a massive factor. You know, let's not forget Eubank Jr. has publicly said he's trained himself for this fight.
And you believe that?
Personally, yeah. You know, I know Ronnie's been in the corner as he sort of always has been. However, it's not really done him. He's not had great success in that sort of setup before. His dad is sort of, whether it's like the ultimate mind game and double bluffing, but even today, he's telling fans, boycott the fight, do not watch this fight. It shouldn't be going ahead with the weight and stuff. So you compare that then to Conor Benn's camp. They've gone off to the Isle of Wight. They're training properly. He's sparring with Felix Cash, who people, let me know what you think in the comment section, but personally, I'd tip Felix Cash to beat Chris Eubank Jr. So he's getting the perfect, like a great sparring against proper middleweight as well. So I think the training camps will have been, it'll be perfect for Ben to have at least given him every chance of winning. You know, if he doesn't pull it off, which again, like I say, I really want Ben to win, but I can see that he possibly can't. I can agree with Greg's comment on screen, in fairness.
Yeah, I was just going to run through them because it's quite clear. I mean, Imran said a good point, which a couple of the boys in the chat have picked up. So Greg's saying, I want Ben to win, as I've always been a fan of his dad, but I think Eubank will win unless Ben managed to land a great shot and KO him, which I kind of think's unlikely. But then there's been another point raised by Mickey C. He says, I do. Let me just get that one up. I do agree with that comment about people picking Ben because of their dislike for Eubank. Really good point there. He was on about Imran's point. So that seems to be a running theme about who people would like to win and realistically whether they can or not. But then he says he's actually put on a good point saying, I don't think Ben would take the fight unless he thought he would have a chance. He could have easily waited a year or two and still have got the fight. Now, that's a tricky one, Imran, because me and you have had discussions, you know, on our private chats, haven't we, for a long time about how many killers there are in the welterweight division. So, is it a case of Conor Benn not being ready or not being willing or not being, or his management team, including Eddie Hearn, not wanting to sacrifice him to face one of the killers in the welterweight division? And this is probably an easier fight, because if he loses to Chris Eubank Jr., it's not really the end of the world, because people can say he lost to a middleweight, somebody who was much bigger than him. Do you think it's more of a case of that, or do you think actually he genuinely believes he can beat Eubank?
I think it's financially I think it's financially very lucrative. So you fight Keith Thurman, very dangerous fight. It's not as big. You get beat by Keith Thurman, potentially. If Keith, that would have been a good fight. But if you get beat by Keith Thurman, where do you kind of go? I mean, people think Keith Thurman's kind of sliding past his best. So you get beat by Keith Thurman, you get beat by Eubank, you get a huge payday where you get rewarded massive financially. But the point that I think it Michael C that made the point that I don't think Ben would take the fight unless he thought he'd have a chance. Did Kell Brook think he'd beat Gennady Golovkin? Did Amir Khan think that they'd beat Canelo Alvarez? I mean, every fighter thinks that they can beat it, but it's not about whether a fighter thinks whether he can beat you. You know, if you put a fighter in with anybody, he'll say, yeah, I can beat him. But you got to be realistic. I mean, as a fight fan, we all knew that Kell Brook's chances against Gennady Golovkin were slim to none. I mean, we all knew that Amir Khan's chances against Canelo Alvarez was slim to none. And what happened in those fights clearly showed. Clearly showed. I mean, they both were very.
Listen, Imran, I'm sorry to cut you off, but Amir Khan was winning rounds against Canelo. I don't care what anyone was saying.
Bro, I was going to say Brook was against Golovkin as well, to be fair.
But that's irrelevant. They both ended up on the floor unconscious, knocked out cold, and the other one had his eye socket smashed in. So they weren't the same after that. We could say that. Yeah, well, Eubank isn't Golovkin or Canelo, but I'd on the other hand say Ben isn't Brook or Khan either. So the point I'm trying to make is that I think this is pretty dangerous. I mean, if Eubank is anywhere near his best, I mean, it could be dangerous as well, because the guy's a lot smaller. So I don't really like the fight. I think it's all based on whether it's based on handicaps. Is Eubank not going to be at his best, and then Ben might chin him? I mean, I don't really like fights like that. I think it's a bit of a gimmicky type fight, to be honest with you.
Well, I kind of agree with Joel Phillips saying there. Hi, Joel. How are you doing, mate? He says, this is a win-win for Ben. Eubank has more to lose. I think it's more a way to raise Ben's stock without the risk. And that's kind of what I was getting at. Because if you put him in one of the top welterweights, then you've got a real problem. Do you not see an element of that, though, Josh? Or do you think he's ready for those guys? Do you genuinely think, he actually believes he can beat Eubank, rather than this is a calculated risk? This is more of a business decision.
If I'm being brutally honest, I thought it was just as has sort of been said in the chat, it was the biggest payday for potentially the least risk of fight. For the same reasons everyone's sort of saying it's sort of a win-win for him. Whereas, again, like Imran said, if you go in with Keith Thurman and lose, where'd you sort of go from there with the point that Keith Thurman's in at? But when you saw him in the face-off and stuff, whether he can or can't, Conor Benn genuinely believes he wins this fight. You can't fake that kind of commitment and passion to what you're saying. I don't care, that he's a boxer, he's not an actor. So you can't fake that. So I think he genuinely believes it. But I've just got to bring up Ray because it's completely thrown me. This comment off Mickey C, and I saw it throw you as well. That has tickled me.
Actually, I was laughing at another comment, which I'll bring up in a second. But what it says, Khan was ahead by 2 rounds, but he's got a chin like a prawn cracker. Actually, I had him ahead by a little more than in 2 rounds, but fair enough. It was Davey's comment. He says, "Your phone's ringing, bro."
That was my mum's phone that was ringing. Sorry about that.
It was Eddie Hearn, mate. It was Eddie Hearn, not your mum. It was Eddie Hearn. Tell the truth.
It's Frank Warren, isn't it? He's getting the Fury fight after this.
Getting the checkbook out.
Yeah. Getting those shoulders out.
You know what? I wanted to add actually on Joel Phillips' point. Actually, I actually agree with that. I feel as though they probably looked at the fighters like Keith Thurman, etc., and they probably thought maybe not ready for that, and they probably thought let's take a fight where you can make big money, but even if he's to lose, his credibility, like Eubank, has more to lose, whereas Ben's credibility.
Okay, yes, I hear all that, but why not put him in with David Avanesian?
Because he's with Frank Warren, isn't he?
Right, I'm sorry.
But why not? I mean, David Avanesian's not, in my opinion, one of the top 10 welterweights. So why wouldn't it not be easier and wouldn't it not be better to put him in with somebody like David Avanesian, still riding off that Josh Kelly win, rather than this circus fight, you could call it, against Eubank Jr.?
It probably would make sense to do that, but I understand why they also went for this fight as well. I understand why they went for the Eubank fight as well, though. So it depends, really.
Depends
on. Are you
on.
Yes, because I need to. Oh, I'm sorry. This is.
Hang on. He's just. We'll give him another. He was just about to say something, and we'll come to you, Josh. It depends on.
Because look. If you look at I'm going off like what the reason for this fight is. Look at the occasion. This is like probably one of the biggest shows. For British boxing this year. The dads have got history. Conor Benn right now, he's on he's on good form. He's still learning. It won't hurt him in the long run if he's to take this fight. And if you think about what it would do for him if he was to win. Obviously, we know probably he's not ready for a world title yet, but I feel like he will get there. But I just feel like right now, this fight for me is less risk, because if he loses that fight, where would he go? Whereas if he loses this fight, he's still got his credibility. He still will get his shot. He still gets the big paydays. Right. So,
okay, all right, fair enough. So it's about if he loses, where can he go? All right, Josh, since you were itching to get in there, go on, say your piece.
Cut the bullshit, and it's ridiculous. This David Avanesian hype. Yes, 2 years ago he beat Josh Kelly, was riding the crest of a wave. We all thought, well, he looks like he can do something.
He's a European champion.
Is he a name, though? Because this is what I was just going to say. He's since signed for Frank Warren. He's fought Askari Metz, who I don't care what anyone says. If you'd heard of him, you're lying. We all had to go on BoxRec and find out who he was.
We did.
Yeah. So, and I can't even remember. I can't remember his other opponent. I think it was British level. Was it Liam Walsh? He's in made. I could be wrong. But in that time,
Liam Taylor, but that, yeah.
Yeah, but whoever, regardless, it wasn't anybody of significant note, and no disrespect to anybody. We can't sit here. We always talk about keeping that same energy. We cannot sit here and slag off Conor Benn's resume for fighting world champions or world title challengers just past their best, and then talk about David Avanesian, who's fought nobody of note since Josh Kelly, and even Josh Kelly, in fairness, was unproven. That was a roll of the dice for him. So we cannot sit here. Sorry, I should say beating anybody, because I know going back he's been in with bigger names.
Yeah.
in the last 2 years, Avanesian's fought nobody. Ben's at least fighting, fringe world level guys. So I'm sorry, taking that fight, and look, that was post-COVID when you could just have fans back. It was at Wembley Arena. I remember watching it and thinking, wow, that's an empty arena. There was like 200 fans there. So commercially, Avanesian's not a ticket seller. He's not a financial draw. So why the hell is Eddie Hearn going to go and try and talk to Frank Warren about doing a deal to fight Avanesian? Conor Benn's the bigger name. Conor Benn's got the better resume in the last couple of years in particular. All Avanesian's bringing is a European title, which obviously isn't that important to Team Ben because they've not really fought for titles. Obviously, I know they've done the WBA Continental route, but, he didn't go British. I know they tried with Chris Jenkins. They're just not bothered. It's going to be about the money, risk and reward. They're fighters fighting for purses at the end of the day. I bet there isn't. I bet if what he's getting for the Eubank Jr fight, the purse would be 10 or 15% to fight Avanesian. It's just common sense. You want to get paid.
Imran, what's your views on that?
The thing is, I kind of have mixed views on that because Conor Benn has a name because of his father. And what I mean by that is if Conor Benn didn't have the father he had, Conor Benn would be in a similar situation to David Avanesian. The reason, the politics of boxing for someone like David Avanesian, no one wants to fight David Avanesian. I mean, it's not like David Avanesian would fight Conor Benn in a heartbeat. It's really Conor Benn that is their side that wouldn't want to fight him because they think he doesn't really bring much to the table and he's a risky fight. Eddie Hearn's openly admitted that. So we can't really have a go at David Avanesian because when you fight Conor Benn, there's a lot more money attached to it. Whereas when you fight David Avanesian, the check isn't as big. So David Avanesian, even though he's, in my opinion, he's a lot more accomplished than Conor Benn, might not have a great resume or whatever, but he's a European champion. And Conor Benn's achievements to date don't surpass that. I mean, he might be beating guys, but those guys are way, way past their best. And they're not European. They're not European championship. Like, I mean, Adrian Granados wouldn't beat Avanesian. Neither would Algieri at that point. Yeah, in their prime. I mean, Algieri. I'm not talking about Granados in his prime would have beaten Avanesian, but Algieri may have beaten Avanesian in his prime. But when he fought him, he was way, way past his prime, and he was 39 or whatever. So I kind of see where Josh is coming from there, but again, at the same time, it's a bit unfair to criticize David Avanesian because David Avanesian isn't blessed with the name that Conor Benn has, hence why he doesn't really get the opportunities.
Yeah,
but you're gonna use that if any of us were given a name, it's your birthright. You're gonna use it. And just one thing I would sort of disagree with you there. I know they're saying nobody wants to fight Avanesian. But don't tell me they couldn't have got somebody would have took that fight. Frank Warren always talks about backing his fighters, getting the shoulders out, and he'll back his fighters. He delivers for his fighters. Do not tell me they couldn't have got the checkbook out and got somebody just better than someone we're having to Google. Liam Taylor and Askari Metz off the back of Josh Taylor is disgusting. There's no other, I'm sorry, but there's no other, you can't beat around the bush. They could have done better than that. Now, I realise for Conor Benn, it's a bit of a risk, but why not Michael McKinson? If you're going to try and get a matchroom fight, if that's what Frank Warren wants to chase, McKinson's proven he'll fight anybody and he brings more name value, which then if that fight draws, then you've got the potential to go and chase a Conor Benn fight or a bigger fight in the division. We can't sit, I'm sorry, and it's not often I will die on this hill. David Avanesian's record in the last 2 years is nothing short of a disgrace.
That's in the 2 years, but prior to that, in the rest of his career, it's he's fought some names, hasn't he, Imran?
I mean, like he beat a granddad in Shane Mosley as well, So he's kind of done the same thing Conor Benn's done, but he beat a legend in Shane Mosley who was, very old. But the point is that, like I said, Conor Benn has a name in boxing. Politics plays a huge part. When you have a name, people want to fight you. Like Chris Algieri wouldn't fight David Avanesian because it wouldn't make any sense. And yeah, Josh is right about Michael Mickinson. But again, David Avanesian beating Michael Mickinson, it doesn't really, that doesn't mean that he beats Michael Mickinson. Conor Benn's going to say, all right, I'll fight you now because you beat Michael Mickinson. Conor Benn said himself when he was asked about fighting Michael Mickinson, he said, Well, what does Mickinson bring to the table? I mean, Mickinson's, he's got a horrible style. He started talking about his style. I mean, what's that all about, man? You're talking about his style? I don't care about his style. I want to see you fight him and see if you can overcome that style. This is what Conor Benn was saying about Mickinson, that his style. So, I mean, Conor Benn didn't want to fight Michael Mickinson either. I would like to see that fight.
You have Avanesian and Frank Warren.
Just want to come on to this point just very quickly, Josh. Just Davey's saying if Ben was able to drop into 140, there's some good fights for him. Plus, he's not a big welter. I just want to, because obviously Yas is just there, and I just want to pick his brains, because we'll talk about the weight, but we'll talk about the weight for Eubank. Conor Benn is a pretty small guy. And Imran, you remember how I've said to you a couple of times about that picture between Conor Benn and it was Teofimo Lopez, wasn't it? And Teofimo Lopez was actually losing weight, and he was still a lot bigger when he was stood shoulder to shoulder than Conor Benn. Just because Yas was you were on about where does he go if he loses? If he loses, is that a viable option if he's not going to target the top guys at welterweight?
I would say so, yeah, because remember, Ben's got his ranked, right? So even if he was to lose, there are fights there for him. So to be honest, I'm so drilled into this fight. I haven't even thought about what would happen if Ben loses, or I'm just so like focused on this fight. But I feel like if he was to lose, yes, in his division, he could still go back and he could still make fights, because at the end of the day, he's got a name.
But do you think he can drop down though? So do you think he could drop down to 140 and be effective there?
I'm not sure, to be honest. I feel like there's a case of maybe he can, because he's still quite young. He's only 25 years old. So, and obviously, but at the same time, we don't know. Maybe all this, like the hard camp and putting on like what 10 pounds more than what he usually fights at, it could have an effect on him. So I'm not sure, but I feel as though he probably could maybe make that weight. But I feel like it would drain him if he was to.
Josh, I kind of think Conor Benn would have to cut off his right arm and his right leg to make that weight. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think he can. And the main reason I think that, to be honest, is because, we've talked a lot about how many beasts, killers, whatever we want to call them, there are in the welterweight division. So if you could make 140 comfortably, let's be fair, this fight's come about because he's not quite ready for that step into the killers in the welterweight division. So if he could make 140 and avoid them, I think he probably would. And this fight shows that for me, this fight backs that point up. I just don't think he could. Although he's not the biggest of guys, he's quite stocky. He can be quite thick set, come fight night. So I just don't think he could make 140. It'd be great if he could, but I just think it's one of those, if he could, he would be doing it.
Well, there's another point by Davey. He says if Ben was to stay at welterweight, he won't get a world strap until the champs in the elite and weight move on. That could be for a long time, because while people think about Spence and Crawford, Imran, there's also a certain guy called Jerome Butenis who looks as though he's going to be in the welterweight division for some time, and then obviously you've got Virgil Ortiz as well, Imran. So he looks as though he's those welterweights aren't going to disappear anytime soon. Is that right, Imran?
Yeah, Jaron Ennis is, that guy's phenomenal. Like I said to you, I think he's probably one of the most talented fighters I've ever seen. I mean, the guy's phenomenal. So that guy's going to dominate. I don't know if he's going to stay at welterweight for that long. I think he's going to win a few belts. Like, I think Ennis is that good that I think he beats Crawford and Spence now. I said it before. I think he's really good. And I think he'll probably move up because he's massive. I mean, Ennis makes Spence look smaller. I mean, he's huge. Yeah. He's absolutely huge, and he's only young. I mean, so he's not going to stay at that weight for that long. The thing is with Conor Benn, to me, looking at his physique, if he could make 140, he certainly can't make it now after moving to 1.5, whatever, he's 157. He's not going to make 140 ever. I mean, there's no chance of that. But the problem is with Conor Benn, I feel like he's too big for 140, but he's too small for 154. So I think 147 is probably going to be the weight that he stays for his whole career. unless if he does move up, I think he's going to be very undersized. Because can you imagine, even like he's moving up and fighting Eubank is huge, but imagine him fighting Jamel Charlo, for example. Like Jamel Charlo is an absolute unit. I mean, he's 6 foot, he's huge. I mean, Conor Benn just doesn't seem a very, very big guy like that. I even think Conor Benn looks small compared to like if you put him next to an Ugas or a Keith Thurman or a Spence, I mean, or Ennis. I don't think he looks that big, to be honest. So I'm not so sure that I'm not so sure he's going to be moving up to 154. I think 147 is going to be the weight he stays throughout his whole career.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting point, and we've got Davey, boxing historian, talking about a prospective fight in the future. I'm assuming if Ben emerges victorious, if Josh Taylor moves up, I think Ben would be a good start for his welter campaign. I think that would be quite a difficult start, despite how I think Saturday would go. Don't you think, Josh? I think Josh Taylor might have bitten off a bit more than he can chew if he was to fight Conor Benn in his debut at welterweight.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a good fight, and it's definitely one that I think the public could get behind and would want to watch.
Without a doubt, Battle of Britain.
Exactly, but that's not a fight I'd want because say what you want about Conor Benn, but he is come forward. He is relentless in his pressure, and yes, Josh Taylor's better than the opposition, but he also when Catterall pressured him, he lost that fight. We've talked about that quite openly.
Didn't like it, did he?
No, exactly.
Who do you think wins? Who do you think wins, Taylor or Ben, if they were to fight in 5 months' time?
Right now, I'd probably go Ben, genuinely. I just think, Josh Taylor hasn't looked great recently, lost his last fight, so confidence, I don't care what he says, confidence can't be high. He knows he's got away with one.
He's got a new trainer.
And?
How much...
Go on.
See that again, Imran?
I don't think I've come across a fighter that's gone from zero to hero. I mean, gone from hero to zero like Josh Taylor. I mean, people's opinion that has changed about Josh Taylor. I mean, it's like I wasn't sold from the start. I thought he's a good fighter. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, the way people have just turned on him, like I've never seen any like it. Undisputed champion, and all of a sudden people just think. Like, can you imagine if we had this conversation before the Catterall fight, or maybe a year before? I mean, and saying Ben would beat Josh Taylor, which is, I think Josh is right. I think it's a possible. I think it's a strong. It could happen, but people would have laughed. People would have said, "Oh, you're clueless," this, that, and the other, because Taylor was being seen as the next big thing in Britain, right? The next Joe Calzaghe and the next Lennox Lewis, and he's up there. Now all of a sudden, he's just a normal fighter.
Yeah. I think it was how he handled the blatant loss. I think you'd have had to respect him if he'd have acknowledged. He didn't even have to say I lost, did he? He could have just said, "Look, we're all got our views. Let's get the rematch sorted straight away." Instead, he's tried
to have bad nights.
Yeah, exactly. He could, there was ways to handle the loss, wasn't there? And then they've dragged their heels with the rematch. There's been various sort of spats across social media, and who knows if we'll get it. So I think he's become hated, really. In fact, I was a fan of his, but I can't say I can't say I am anymore, to be fair.
Yeah, we're going back to our main topic. There's a point come from Chris Wells. Chris, thanks very much for joining us, mate. Evening, lads. Hope you're well. Can't wait for Eubank v Ben. It's the first boxing event I'll be going to, and what a fight it is to go to.
What a first one.
What if you can go to any fight as your first fight? Wow.
The undercard,
Chris, enjoy your night, enjoy your weekend, mate. Enjoy your weekend. But Davey says, going back to that point about Josh Taylor, he says that I remember seeing Ben talk after the Ramirez fight, and he said that I hope Josh stays out of my division. You could be saying that out of kindness, though, Davey. Don't you think, Imran? Rather than, I'm a little bit afraid. Josh Taylor seems to be, this kid on the upcoming. Do you think he was probably saying, well, you better stay out of my division because I'm going to batter him?
Who Conor Benn was saying about Josh Taylor that I'll batter him? Yeah. Conor Benn's quite confident. He believes in himself. So, yeah, I think Conor Benn would believe that he'd do Josh Taylor. But I think Conor Benn's been pretty respectful towards Josh Taylor. I think had always, from what I've seen, I don't know, maybe the interview that Davey saw, maybe he saw something, but I think he's always been pretty respectful of Josh Taylor. That's a good fight. It's a good fight because I think we'll all agree that I mean the 140-pound division that Josh Taylor became undisputed in, it's not the greatest division in the world. I mean, compared to welterweight anyway. I mean, I think we'd all agree there's probably about 5 or 6 guys that we'd probably pick to beat Josh Taylor at welterweight, right? That we wouldn't favor. I mean, with Josh Taylor. So I think Davey's right. A good fight between him and Ben would definitely be a fight that I would be interested in. And most importantly, it's not a gimmick, is it? It's a proper fight between 2 guys the same size. There's no handicapping. There's no like, oh yeah, you've got to make this weight or rehydration and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
I don't like all of that stuff. You know, boxing's going down a bit of a wrong path, having these gimmicky fights, you know. And you know, the thing is, you know, Eubank Sr, he's made good points. I mean, you know, that my son's coming down 3 pounds. I mean, we look at it differently, or that he's maybe it's a PR stunt. No, it's serious. I mean, he's been in a ring with a fighter that's been seriously damaged. His son's been in a ring with a fighter that's been seriously damaged. I mean, and it effectively, in order to make this fight interesting, they're trying to handicap someone effectively, because that's what's the intrigue, not the fact that it's one guy's skill against another guy's skill. It's
Chris Eubank Sr is in a very difficult position, Imran, because you're touching on there on the subject of Michael Watson, and don't forget Nigel Benn also fought Jerome McClelland. And there's implications in that fight. But then also when you look at it with Chris Eubank Jr., he also lost his son last year, Sebastian. So he knows grief and he knows loss better than anyone. So I think his views, obviously, on the fight should be respected. Having said that, Chris Eubank Jr. is his own man, and all fighters know the risks when they lace up the gloves. So having said all that, the fight's still going ahead. Chris Eubank Jr. is still going ahead with it. So really, should he lose, the weight shouldn't come into it. Because for me, it's a bit like when Juan Manuel Marquez fought Floyd Mayweather, and everyone was going on about the weight. And he said, oh no, weight's not an issue. At his post-fight press conference, first thing he says when he was beaten, the weight was an issue. Josh, do you agree with that?
No, I totally agree. I mean, you know, the weight has got issues for both fighters. I stand by that. You know, Ben's strengths rely on him being sort of fast, agile, relentless. Can he do that with an extra 10 pounds? We don't know. So there's challenges with the weight for both. I appreciate potentially for Eubank Jr. they're a bit more health conscious, but the weight is still a challenge. If Eubank Jr. knows his own body, he's clearly in shape, always has been. He's going to know, whether he admits it publicly, which he clearly isn't, because with the games he's playing with KFC and all the rest of it, but he's going to know what it's going to take out of him to do those 3 pounds. I still think the biggest issue with the weight, as we sort of said earlier, the biggest issue is the rehydration. And I think it quite simply comes down to that.
Right. Another point by Chris, and I'll have to ask you two for your predictions a bit later on, but it says here, my brain saying either Eubank KO in round 10 or Ben stoppage in round 10. He seems to like round 10, don't he, Chris? So he's sitting on the fence. But there's another point by Davey, and I think I've kind of just answered that one. It says they asked Junior if Senior would be at the fight, and he said, I'm working on that. How could he not be there? Well, I think we just kind of spoke about that. I think Chris Eubank Senior's probably been through a lot, if that makes sense. So if he doesn't want to be there, you could possibly understand that one, Davey. And then Greg says, especially when Eubank Jr. keeps shouting 60%, it's getting in Conor Benn's head. Well, yeah, there's that. I mean, if you're going to wear T-shirts with 60% or 50% or whatever it is, you can't then use weight as an excuse. But I'm going to go for your predictions, guys, before we wrap this one up. Imran, predictions and even a round if needs be.
I'm gonna go Eubank stoppage 8 rounds.
Right. Clear cut, not messing about there. Josh, what would you say?
See, I'm really normally I'd nail a prediction out quite quickly. This one I stand by what I said at the start. I really want Ben to win, but I am like sort of I can see cases for both, but I'm gonna back him, and I'll go Ben on decision. I don't think he'll get the stoppage, but I can see a fight where he's just more active and busier.
Right. Well, we're starting to see a few come in. Deary, he's going for Eubank round 6 stoppage. Yeah. It's an interesting one. But guys,
What's your prediction, Ray?
I was just about to get out of that doing that as well, and then you pull us up.
Chance.
So yeah. I've been caught trying to Skype. I'm gonna go for Eubank. I'm gonna go for points Eubank. So yeah, we've had Greg. He's saying Eubank points or Ben KO. So he's and we've got Joel Eubank by points. So we're getting a bit of a mix there, guys. But guys, don't forget, drop your comments. Let us know what you think. Don't forget, guys, Imran's going to be joining us live on Saturday, straight after the fight for a reaction. So we're lucky to have Imran on tonight, and we're even more lucky and blessed to have him on Saturday night to give us his reaction to the fight. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. Imran, thank you very much for coming on.
No worries.
Always a pleasure to have you on.
Cheers,
and guys, we'll see. We've got plenty more content coming up through the week, and we'll see you guys Saturday live.